One of the most serious religious conflicts that Rome had was with Judaism. Although initially the relationship between Rome and Jewish communities was amicable, and Jewish communities prospered throughout the Republic and Empire, that all changed during the first half of the 1st century AD. The fundamental conflict between Jewish monotheism and the Roman imperial cult precipitated the First Roman-Jewish War of 68 AD to 74 AD. It was during this war that Christianity was first mentioned as a separate religion from Judaism. The very first Christians were indeed Jews, and were known as Jewish Christians. This first version of Christianity was a practice very close to Judaism, where the historical Jesus of Nazareth held his ministry. After his execution, his followers began spreading Christianity throughout other parts of the Roman Empire. Subsequently, the majority of the new converts were Gentiles, non-Jews. The fact that Jesus was also presented as human as well as divine deepened the conflict between Christianity and the strictly monotheistic and Unitarian Judaism. On the other hand, it was also what made Christianity feel less foreign to the rest of the Greco-Roman population, who were used to their gods having physical forms in one way or another. In spite of the virtually insignificant number of followers, Christianity proved to have an impact on life and politics in the empire almost from the start. The fact that they were blamed by Nero for the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD. This resulted in the first known persecution of Christians in Rome. The very first Christian church is believed to be the Cenacle, the room where the Last Supper supposedly took place. Otherwise, until Christianity was legalized by Constantine the Great, Christians gathered for services and worship in private houses. These house churches were convenient due to the fact they looked like any other ordinary houses, which enabled Christians to gather in private without fear of persecution and reprisal. One of the oldest house churches discovered was in Dura Europos in Syria. The first known, genuine, purposely built church was discovered in Aqaba, modern-day Jordan. Ironically, it was built near the end of the 3rd century, shortly before the beginning of the severe Christian persecution under Diocletian. The reason it survived is generally attributed to the church being at the periphery of the Roman Empire. The persecutions were, for the most part, caused by the disruptive influence of Christianity on the Roman way of life and the functioning of the state. The main conflict here was between Christianity's seemingly individualistic nature and the focus on the state, city, or society by the Roman religion. For example, there were several instances where Roman state officials complained that due to an increasing number of conversions to Christianity, the Roman temples were emptying. This was a problem, and also because fewer people visiting the temples meant that there were fewer offerings and donations. The next persecutions happened during the reigns of Domitian and Marcus Aurelius. Following a lull in such activities during the next century, the persecutions resumed under Decius. He made it illegal not to offer sacrifices to the Roman gods. Starting from 303, Diocletian signed various edicts aimed at curbing the spread of Christianity and punishing Christians. Executions, torture, imprisonment, and the confiscation of property were commonplace during this time. By the beginning of the reign of Marcus Aurelius, there were tens of thousands of Christians in the empire. Christianity underwent explosive growth during Commodus's unstable reign and the crisis of the 3rd century, thriving during chaos and conflict. By the year 300, Christians represented as much as 10% of the population. It was a universal religion, which means that the possible converts were not discriminated against based on ethnicity, prior religious beliefs, and social class. Christianity also seamlessly melded into Roman cultural and social life. The Christian Gospels were written with a vocabulary that would resonate with the majority of the Roman populace, the most notable examples being soteria, salvation, soter, saviour, and dominus, Lord. Even the very word for the Gospel, euangelion. Another reason for the rise of Christianity during times of great crisis was Christian charity work. Wars and pestilence brought forth innumerable injuries and illnesses to the people of the empire. While the state's response to the people's suffering was adequate, Christian communities provided aid beyond their meager means. When certain cities were suffering from an outbreak of illness, Christian communities offered curative and palliative aid to those afflicted. Doubtlessly, this considerably influenced the swelling of their numbers. Additionally, unlike their Roman counterparts, Christian priests were mostly available to the wider public, and not considered a social elite. Virtually any commoner could seek out a priest for a confession, advice, or aid. It was this personal nature between the clergy and the devotees, as well as regular gatherings, that fostered a sense of community within the Christian population,